One of the things I wish I did when I was learning to animate was to use less detail in the things that I was animating. In doing so, I would have been able to save a lot more time and dedicate that time to learning new motions or techniques. But instead of spending those hours doing those things, I instead spent them adding these tiny details to each individual frame. So here's an animation I did roughly 4 years ago. It's a very simple one. There are a lot of things I would change about it, but it took quite a while. And the reason it took a while is because of the amount of detail on the character. Now you may say, well, it actually does look quite basic to some standards, but when you think about it, if we just zoom in on this part here, we need to add these 2 individual pixels to every single frame here. And when we do that for every single small detail, whether it be the slight shading here, or on the arms, or on the scarf, it adds up a lot to the point where you're spending, I'd say 80% of the time adding these tiny small details rather than doing the animation itself. And when your goal is to learn animation, doing these extra hours of work doesn't really help. So if I were to go back and do this animation again, but as a beginner, here's how I would probably change the character. Okay, so that's at least as simple as I would go. Just by shaving off all these small details here and making all the shapes a single colour, for the most part, I've already probably saved hours here. And what can I do with those multiple hours? Well, I can go practice something else. Here's another simple animation I did. I think this one was 5 years ago, 2017. Again, there's a similar problem with this one in which I spent far too long on it just because of the amount of detail. So if we zoom in, we've got all this shading on the trousers, little marks as well, same on the shirt, same on everything really. There's too much detail and there's too much shading, too many things which I need to add to all of these frames. And so again, if I could do this animation again, I would probably shave off most of the details. And I think this is as far as I would go. By taking off all these tiny details, I've probably saved myself about, 8 years. I think when you try too hard in the early stages of learning to make your work look super professional and overly detailed, you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice. I also think in general that people should be more careful when adding detail to the things that they are animating. If you're doing work for a project or a client or something like that, then you have to kind of figure out whether that extra tiny detail, which is going to add an extra 30 minutes to your work, is worth the actual effort. Because the time it takes to implement them adds up, and they add up quickly, so you have to be a bit careful.